Meryl Streep was sitting in a charming Italian restaurant in Manhattan, savoring a rare moment of solitude, when a small boy with haunted eyes approached her table, clutching a worn teddy bear missing one eye. The moment he leaned in and whispered those 7 words in her ear, the acclaimed actress's face drained of all color. Without hesitation, she reached for her phone with trembling hands and dialed 911, her eyes never leaving the child's face. What happened next would not only test her courage and compassion, but would ultimately expose a criminal network that had been operating in plain sight for years, changing countless lives forever. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel because tomorrow we have another special story for you. The soft afternoon sunlight filtered through the large windows of Bella Notte, casting a warm glow across the rustic wooden tables and brick walls adorned with black and white photographs of the Italian countryside. Tucked away on a quiet side street in Manhattan, the restaurant was a hidden gem that had become Meryl Streep's sanctuary whenever she needed to escape the relentless pace of her career. Today was one of those days. After 6 exhausting weeks of filming her new project, a gritty drama where she portrayed a child advocate fighting against a broken system, Meryl had carved out this afternoon for herself. No script readings, no wardrobe fittings, no press interviews, just a quiet lunch and her thoughts. "More water, Miss Streep?" asked the waiter, a young man who had mastered the art of attending to her needs without making a fuss about her celebrity status. "Thank you, Marco," she replied with a genuine smile, appreciating his discretion. As he filled her glass, Meryl returned to the notes spread before her. Though this was supposed to be her day off, she couldn't help bringing her research materials. Her next role required a deep understanding of childhood trauma and its lasting effects, a subject she approached with the same meticulous dedication that had earned her 3 Academy Awards. "The psychological impact of trauma on developing minds," she murmured, underlining a passage in the article before her. The more she researched, the more passionate she became about the project. It wasn't just another role. It was an opportunity to shed light on issues that deserved attention. The gentle clatter of silverware and murmur of conversations created a soothing backdrop as Meryl enjoyed her linguine alle vongole. Between bites, she jotted down observations, occasionally glancing around the half-filled restaurant, observing people in their natural state, a habit that enriched her character studies. That's when she first noticed them. A table near the back wall was occupied by a well-dressed couple and a small boy. The man wore an expensive charcoal suit with a blue tie, his posture rigid and commanding. The woman beside him was equally polished in a cream-colored blouse and tailored pants, her blonde hair styled in a sleek bob. But it was the child who caught Meryl's attention. He sat perfectly still, unlike most children his age who would be fidgeting or exploring their surroundings. His dark hair was neatly combed, and he wore a crisp blue button-down shirt that seemed too formal for a child of perhaps 5 or 6. In his arms he clutched a worn teddy bear that contrasted sharply with his pristine appearance. Something about the tableau struck Meryl as discordant. The adults spoke to each other in low tones, barely acknowledging the boy, except when the woman occasionally leaned over to straighten his collar or whisper what appeared to be instructions. There was no warmth in these interactions, no casual tousling of hair or shared smiles that typically characterize family outings. Drawing on decades of observing human behavior for her craft, Meryl noted the tension in the boy's small shoulders, the way his eyes darted nervously whenever the man shifted in his seat. Having portrayed countless complex relationships on screen, she recognized the signs of fear disguised as obedience. "Just the research getting to me," she told herself, trying to refocus on her notes. But her gaze kept returning to the boy. When their eyes met briefly across the restaurant, Meryl offered a small, friendly smile. The boy quickly looked down at his plate, but not before she caught a flicker of something in his expression, a silent plea that triggered her maternal instincts. The woman's cell phone rang, breaking the atmosphere. After checking the screen, she excused herself and stepped outside to take the call, her movements brisk and purposeful. The man immediately pulled out his own phone, becoming absorbed in whatever was on the screen, his attention completely diverted from the child. Meryl watched as the boy glanced at the distracted man, then at the exit where the woman had disappeared. Something changed in his demeanor, a decision being made. With deliberate slowness, he slid from his chair, the teddy bear clutched tightly, to his chest. The man didn't look up, his thumb scrolling rapidly through his phone. The boy took one tentative step toward Meryl's table, then another. His approach was hesitant, but determined, like someone gathering courage for something momentous. Meryl set down her fork, giving him her full attention as he navigated between tables. Something about his purposeful movement told her this wasn't a typical case of a child approaching a recognized face from movies. As he reached her table, she noticed details up close that had been invisible from across the restaurant. A fading, bruise near his hairline, partially concealed by carefully combed hair, and the slight tremor in his small hands as they gripped the teddy bear, missing one eye. "Hello there," Meryl said gently, keeping her voice warm and unthreatening. The boy glanced back at his table. The man was still engrossed in his phone, unaware of the child's absence. "Is that your teddy bear?" Meryl asked, pointing to the well-loved toy. "He looks like he's had many adventures." The boy nodded almost imperceptibly, his knuckles white as he gripped the bear tighter. "My name is Meryl," she said, though she suspected he already knew who she was. "What's your name?" He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again, conflict evident in his young face. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "They call me Oliver." The careful phrasing, "they call me," rather than "my name is," wasn't lost on Meryl. Drawing on all her skills at maintaining composure in emotionally charged scenes, she kept her expression neutral despite the alarm bells ringing in her mind. Across the restaurant, the man finally looked up from his phone, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the table and surrounding area for the missing child. "Oliver," Meryl said softly, sensing they had little time. "Is there something you wanted to tell me?" The boy glanced once more toward the man, who was now half rising from his seat, then back to Meryl. Something in her expression must have given him the final push of courage he needed. He leaned forward, clutching his teddy bear like a shield, and opened his mouth to whisper the words that would change everything. Oliver leaned closer to Meryl, his small frame trembling slightly as he clutched his teddy bear tighter. His eyes darted nervously toward the man who was now scanning the restaurant with growing irritation. "They're not my real parents," he whispered, his voice so faint Meryl had to strain to hear it. "They took me from the park. My real name is Nathan. They said if I tell anyone, they'll hurt my mommy." Meryl felt her blood turn to ice, but years of controlling her expressions on camera allowed her to maintain a calm exterior. She kept her smile in place, though her eyes registered the gravity of what she'd just heard. "I see," she said softly, as if the boy had merely commented on his teddy bear. "Nathan is a wonderful name. How long have you been with these people?" The boy's lower lip quivered. "Many sleeps. I counted 37 marks on the wall." Meryl's mind raced. 37 days. Over a month with his abductors. She recalled seeing something on the news about a missing child from Connecticut several weeks ago, but couldn't remember the details. "Your bear looks tired," she said, shifting slightly in her chair to shield the boy from direct view of the man. "Does he have a name?" "Buddy," the boy replied, his voice gaining a touch of warmth for the first time. "He lost his eye when the man got mad and threw him." Meryl nodded, processing this additional evidence of abuse while maintaining her gentle demeanor. "Buddy is very brave to stay with you and protect you, just like you're being brave right now." Across the restaurant, the man had stood up, his expression darkening as he spotted the boy at Meryl's table. He smoothed his tie with one hand and began walking toward them with measured steps. "Nathan," Meryl said quickly, "I'm going to help you, but I need you to be brave like Buddy for a little longer. Can you do that?" The boy nodded, his eyes wide with a mixture of hope and fear. "Good," she said, reaching for her phone underneath the table. "Now we're going to pretend we're just talking about movies and teddy bears, but I believe you, and I'm going to get help." As the man approached, Meryl discreetly pressed 911 on her phone, keeping it concealed beneath the table. She positioned it carefully so the microphone would pick up their conversation. "Well, it was lovely meeting a fan so young," she said brightly, as the man came within earshot. "Do you watch many movies with your parents?" Before Nathan could answer, the man arrived at their table. Up close, his smile appeared practiced and didn't reach his eyes, which remained cold and calculating. "Oliver," he said, his voice carrying a subtle edge despite its outward pleasantness. "I'm sorry if he's bothering you, Mrs. Streep. He's quite the movie enthusiast and spotted you when we came in." Meryl waved her hand dismissively, channeling the gracious celebrity persona she'd perfected over decades. "Not at all. We've been having a delightful conversation about his teddy bear." She extended her hand. "And you are?" "Peter Collins, the—" man replied, his grip firm as they shook hands. "And my wife Diane is just outside taking a call. We're such admirers of your work." Beneath the table, Meryl felt her phone vibrate once, confirmation that the 911 dispatcher was listening. "That's very kind," she replied. "I was just telling Oliver that my next film involves working with children. In fact, I've been researching child psychology extensively." She emphasized these words slightly, hoping the dispatcher would understand the coded message. Peter's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "How fascinating. Well, we should return to our table. Our food is getting cold, and Oliver needs to finish his lunch." Nathan clutched Buddy closer, his knuckles white with tension. "Actually," Meryl said, thinking quickly, "I was about to order dessert. Perhaps Oliver would like to join me. I rarely get to hear such honest feedback from younger audiences." She looked directly at the boy. "Would you like some ice cream, Oliver?" Before Peter could object, the restaurant door opened, and the woman, Diane, returned, her expression tense as she scanned the room. When she spotted them, she quickened her pace, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. "There you are," she said, placing a hand on Nathan's shoulder that looked affectionate but gripped too tightly. "I'm so sorry about this, Miss Streep. Oliver knows better than to disturb people during their meals." Under the table, Meryl heard the faint voice of the 911 dispatcher, asking for confirmation of her location. She discreetly pressed a button to increase the volume. "Bella Notte on Thompson Street," she said, as if sharing the restaurant recommendation with the couple. "I come here whenever I'm in Manhattan. The tiramisu is absolutely worth staying for." The dispatcher's voice came through again, barely audible. "Police officers are 3 minutes out. Keep them there if possible." Diane's eyes narrowed slightly. "That sounds lovely, but we have an appointment to keep." "Surely you can spare 10 minutes. "For dessert?" Meryl countered, signaling Marco, who had been watching the interaction with concern. "My treat. It's not every day I get to meet such a delightful young fan." Marco approached the table. "Is everything all right, Miss Streep?" "Wonderful, Marco. Could we see the dessert menu? And perhaps you could tell our new friends about that special tiramisu I love." Understanding flickered in Marco's eyes. He'd served enough celebrities to recognize when something was amiss. "Of course. We also have a special chocolate fountain that young guests can enjoy while they wait. Perhaps Oliver would like to see it. It's just by the kitchen entrance." Nathan looked up at Meryl, uncertain. "It's perfectly safe," she assured him, meeting his gaze meaningfully. "It's right where the staff can see you at all times." Peter's jaw tightened. "That won't be necessary. We really should. I want to see it," Nathan said suddenly, his voice small but determined. Diane's fingers tightened on his shoulder. "Oliver, don't be rude. We're leaving." Meryl stood up slowly. "I insist, please join me for dessert. I'd love to hear more about your family." The air between them crackled with tension as both Peter and Diane seemed to recalculate their options. Outside through the large front windows, Meryl noticed 2 plainclothes officers walking purposefully toward the restaurant entrance. "Perhaps just for a few minutes," Peter finally conceded, his expression unreadable. As they moved toward an empty table nearby, Meryl gently placed her hand on Nathan's back, a silent promise that she wouldn't let him go. The boy looked up at her, and for the first time Meryl saw a flicker of hope replace the fear in his eyes. The restaurant door opened, and the officers stepped inside. Meryl caught their gaze, giving them an almost imperceptible nod. The whispered secret was about to bring a reckoning. The 2 plainclothes officers moved with casual precision, separating as they entered the restaurant. The woman, with short dark hair and alert eyes, took a table near the front door, while her partner, a tall man with broad shoulders, sat at the bar with a clear view of Meryl's table. Meryl maintained her Academy Award-winning composure, gesturing for Peter and Diane to join her. "Please sit. Marco makes the most divine tiramisu in Manhattan." Peter's eyes darted toward the entrance, something in his expression suggesting he'd noticed the new arrivals. "Perhaps another time. We really do have an appointment." "Surely your appointment can wait a few minutes," Meryl said, gently placing her hand on Nathan's shoulder as she guided him into the chair beside hers. "I so rarely get to hear what my younger audience thinks of my work." Diane glanced at her watch, her perfectly manicured fingers tapping impatiently against the leather band. "We're already running late." Nathan clutched Buddy tighter, his small body rigid with tension. Meryl gave his shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "Actually," she said, inspiration striking, "I'm preparing for a role as a child psychologist. Perhaps Oliver could help me practice some of my lines. It would be so valuable to get authentic reactions from a child his age." Before Peter could object, Marco appeared with dessert menus and a complimentary plate of cannoli. "On the house. For Miss Streep and her friends," he announced, his eyes briefly meeting Meryl's in silent communication. Meryl watched as the female officer casually shifted positions, moving to a table with a clearer line of sight. The male officer ordered a coffee at the bar, his posture relaxed but his attention unmistakably focused on their table. "So, Oliver," Meryl said, turning to Nathan with a warm smile, "in this scene, I'm supposed to ask a child about their favorite things. Can you tell me what you love most in the world?" Nathan hesitated, his eyes flicking toward Peter and Diane before returning to Meryl. "I like dinosaurs," he said softly. "And my mum's pancakes with the happy faces." Diane's smile froze. "Oliver has quite an imagination." "All children do," Meryl agreed pleasantly. "It's what makes them such wonderful scene partners. Tell me more about these pancakes, Oliver. Who makes them for you?" "My real mum," Nathan whispered, then immediately tensed, as Peter leaned forward. "Oliver," Peter said sharply, "stop bothering Miss Streep with your stories." Meryl waved her hand dismissively. "It's no bother at all. Children's imaginations are fascinating. In fact, for my research, I've been studying how children process separation and trauma." She emphasized these words slightly, watching the growing discomfort on Peter and Diane's faces. "Speaking of which," she continued, pulling out her phone, "would you mind if I recorded a bit of our conversation? For my character preparation, of course." "Absolutely not," Peter said immediately, reaching for Nathan's arm. "And we really must be going now." The male officer at the bar stood up, casually adjusting his jacket to reveal the badge clipped to his belt. His partner by the door did the same. Diane noticed first, her perfectly composed face suddenly draining of color. "Peter," she murmured, nodding subtly toward the officers. Peter's expression hardened as he realized what was happening. His hand tightened around Nathan's arm, causing the boy to wince. "Let go of him," Meryl said, her voice dropping all pretense of politeness. "This doesn't concern you," Peter hissed, rising from his chair and pulling Nathan up with him. "I'm afraid it does," said the female officer, approaching their table with her badge now clearly visible. "NYPD, I need everyone to remain seated." The restaurant had gone quiet, other diners watching the scene unfold with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Peter released Nathan's arm but maintained his composure. "There must be some misunderstanding, officer." "No misunderstanding," the male officer said, positioning himself behind Peter and Diane. "We received a call about a possible child abduction." Diane forced a laugh. "That's ridiculous. Oliver is our son." Nathan, seeing the officers, finally found his courage. "My name isn't Oliver," he said, his voice small but clear. "It's Nathan Reynolds. They took me from the park near my house." The officers exchanged glances. "Sir, ma'am, we're going to need to see some identification and any documentation you have regarding your relationship to this child." Peter's demeanor changed instantly, his charm replaced by cold calculation. In one swift motion, he shoved the table forward, sending dishes crashing to the floor. Diane immediately bolted toward the kitchen exit. The male officer tackled Peter before he could follow. while the female officer sprinted after Diane. The restaurant erupted in chaos as diners scrambled away from the struggle. Meryl pulled Nathan to safety, shielding him with her body as Peter fought against the officer's grip. "Stay with me," she whispered to the terrified boy. "You're safe now." Marco, the waiter, guided them behind the counter as the struggle continued. Nathan trembled against Meryl, Buddy clutched to his chest, tears finally breaking through his brave facade. "It's okay to cry," Meryl soothed, holding him close. "You did something incredibly brave today." Outside, sirens wailed as backup arrived. Through the window, Meryl could see the female officer emerging from the alley beside the restaurant, a handcuffed Diane being led to a police car. Inside, Peter had been subdued, his wrists now secured, behind his back as the officer recited his Miranda rights. His eyes found Meryl and Nathan behind the counter, and the cold hatred in his gaze made Meryl instinctively tighten her protective embrace around the boy. A female detective entered the restaurant, her experienced eyes quickly assessing the situation before approaching Meryl and Nathan. She crouched down to Nathan's level, her voice gentle but professional. "Hi there. My name is Detective Maya Rodriguez. You must be Nathan." Nathan nodded, still pressed against Meryl's side. "You're very brave," the detective continued. "Would it be okay if I asked you a few questions? Miss Streep can stay right here with you." Nathan looked up at Meryl, who gave him an encouraging nod. "I'm not going anywhere," she promised. As Detective Rodriguez began her gentle questioning, Meryl noticed a news van pulling up outside. She sighed, knowing her quiet lunch had transformed into what would inevitably become tomorrow's headlines. But looking down at Nathan, his small hand trustingly holding hers, she knew she wouldn't have done anything differently. Outside, Peter and Diane were being placed in separate police cars. As the vehicles pulled away, Meryl felt Nathan relax, slightly against her. "They can't hurt you anymore," she whispered. What she didn't yet know was that this was just the beginning. Nathan's whispered secret would lead to revelations far more disturbing than she could imagine. The back room of Bella Notte had been transformed into an impromptu interview space. Detective Rodriguez sat across from Nathan, who remained nestled against Meryl's side. A child services worker named Elaine Chen had arrived and sat quietly nearby, observing with compassionate eyes. "Nathan, can you tell me a little about where you've been staying?" Detective Rodriguez asked gently, her voice calm and steady. Nathan glanced up at Meryl, who gave him an encouraging nod. "A big house with blue shutters," he said quietly. "They made me stay in a room upstairs. It had a lock on the outside." Rodriguez jotted notes in her small, leather-bound notebook. "And were there other children at this house?" Nathan shook his head, then hesitated. "Not at that house, but they took me to other houses sometimes. There were other kids there." Meryl felt a chill run through her. Rodriguez and Chen exchanged glances, their expressions confirming her worst fears. This was bigger than one kidnapped child. "Can you remember where any of these houses were?" Rodriguez pressed carefully. "One had a big red barn next to it, and another was near water. I could hear boats." As Nathan continued to share details, Meryl marveled at his remarkable memory and courage. Despite his ordeal, he recalled specific landmarks, snippets of conversations he'd overheard, and even the names Peter and Diane had used when speaking to other adults. Outside the back room, the restaurant had been cleared of customers. Through the partially open door, Meryl could see officers collecting evidence and interviewing staff. Marco was gesturing animatedly as he spoke to a uniformed officer, no doubt describing how he had sensed something was wrong. Her phone had been buzzing incessantly. Her agent, publicist, and friends who had somehow already heard about the incident. She'd silenced it without checking the messages. Right now, nothing mattered except the small boy beside her. "Nathan," Rodriguez said, "we've contacted your parents. They're on their way from Connecticut right now." For the first time since his rescue, Nathan's eyes lit up with genuine hope. "My real mom and dad, they're coming?" "Yes," Rodriguez confirmed with a warm smile. "They've been looking for you every single day since you disappeared." Nathan's lower lip trembled. "I thought maybe they forgot about me." "The bad people said no one was looking anymore." Meryl pulled him closer. "No one forgot about you, Nathan, not for a single moment. Elaine Chen, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "Detective, I have the file on Nathan's case. He was abducted 38 days ago from East Rock Park in New Haven. There were no witnesses to the actual abduction, but security footage showed a couple matching Peter and Diane's description in the area." Rodriguez nodded. "That matches what we've learned from our initial interview with the suspects. They're not talking much, but we've confirmed their real names are Peter Whitman and Diane Mercer. Both have records, fraud and identity theft. Mainly. Nothing violent until now." Meryl absorbed this information, trying to reconcile these seemingly sophisticated criminals with the desperate escape attempt they'd made at the restaurant. "They didn't seem prepared for discovery," she observed. "They weren't," Rodriguez agreed. "According to what we can piece together, they were just supposed to be transporting Nathan. Your intervention forced their hand." A young officer appeared at the doorway. "Detective, we've got the search warrant for the address we found in Whitman's wallet. Team is assembling now." Rodriguez stood. "I'll be right there." She turned to Nathan. "You've been incredibly brave and helpful, Nathan. Ms. Chen is going to stay with you until your parents arrive. Is that okay?" Nathan nodded, but his hand tightened around Meryl's. "Can Ms. Streep stay too?" Rodriguez looked at Meryl questioningly. Most celebrities in her experience would have been long gone by now, protected by layers of publicists and lawyers. "Of course I'll stay," Meryl said without hesitation, "as long as you need me." Rodriguez seemed impressed. "Thank you, Ms. Streep. Your assistance today has been invaluable." She lowered her voice. "We believe this may be connected to a larger trafficking network we've been investigating. Your actions may have given us the break we've been waiting for." After Rodriguez left, Elaine Chen moved closer. "Nathan, are you hungry? We could ask for something to eat while we wait for your parents." Nathan thought for a moment. "Can I have pancakes? With happy faces?" Chen smiled. "I think we can arrange that." While Chen stepped out to organize food, Meryl found herself alone with Nathan for the first time since the chaos began. The boy looked up at her, his eyes wide with a question. "How did you know to believe me?" he asked. The other grown-ups didn't. Meryl considered her answer carefully. "Sometimes people see what they expect to see, not what's really there. I've spent my life trying to understand how people feel. It's part of my job as an actress. And when you came to my table, I could see you needed someone to really listen." Nathan nodded, seeming satisfied with this answer. "My mum likes your movies. She says you're the best actress ever." Meryl smiled. "Well, I'll have to thank her for that." "Will you meet her when she comes?" he asked hopefully. "I'd be honored to." The door opened, and Chen returned with an officer who carried 2 bags of fast food. "No pancakes, I'm afraid, but I found the next best thing, breakfast sandwiches. They serve breakfast all day." Nathan accepted the food with a tentative smile. As he ate, Meryl noticed how carefully he handled each bite, as if worried someone might take it away. Small behaviors that spoke volumes about what he'd endured. Outside, the media presence had grown. Through the back window, Meryl could see a gathering of cameras and reporters being kept at bay by police barriers. News traveled fast in New York, especially when it involved a celebrity. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a text from her driver, concerned about her extended absence. She sent a quick reply, explaining she would be staying indefinitely and asking him to reschedule her evening commitments. Nathan had finished his food and was now leaning against her, his eyes growing heavy. The adrenaline was wearing off, and exhaustion was setting in. Within minutes, he was asleep, Buddy clutched securely in his arms. Chen watched him with professional concern. "He's going to need substantial support after this. The trauma of abduction isn't easily overcome." Meryl nodded, thinking of the research she'd been doing for her role. "I know people who might be able to help, specialists in childhood trauma." Before Chen could respond, Rodriguez returned, her expression grim but determined. She gestured for Meryl to join her by the door, away from Nathan's sleeping form. "We've found something at the house," she said quietly. "Evidence that suggests Nathan isn't their only victim. There are photographs, documents, and a calendar with dates and locations." "Other children?" Meryl asked, her heart sinking. Rodriguez nodded. "We think this could be our entry point into a trafficking ring we've been trying to crack for months." She hesitated, then added, The next date on the calendar is 3 days from now. The implications hung heavy in the air between them. Somewhere, another child was in danger. The back room of Bella Notte had grown quiet as the afternoon stretched into early evening. Nathan had awakened from his brief nap and was now coloring on sheets of paper Marco had provided, drawing what appeared to be his family home with meticulous attention to detail. Meryl watched him, noting how his small hand would occasionally pause, his eyes distant as though caught in a memory. In these moments, she resisted the urge to comfort him, understanding that sometimes silence was what healing required. The door opened, and Detective Rodriguez entered with 2 people whose expressions of desperate hope told Meryl exactly who they were. "Nathan," Rodriguez said softly, "there are some people here to see you." The boy looked up, his crayon dropping to the table. For a heartbeat, he simply stared, as if afraid to believe what he was seeing. Then, with a cry that contained 38 days of longing, he launched himself across the room. "Mom! Dad! The tea!" Reynolds' family collapsed into each other, a tangle of arms and tears and broken words. Nathan's mother, a woman with the same dark hair and expressive eyes as her son, seemed unable to speak through her sobs as she ran her hands over Nathan's face and hair, assuring herself he was real. His father, a tall man with glasses and a gentle demeanor, enveloped them both in his arms, his shoulders shaking with silent emotion. Meryl stepped back, suddenly feeling like an intruder in this sacred moment. She caught Chen's eye, and the social worker nodded in understanding. This reunion was going exactly as it should. After several minutes, Nathan remembered Meryl. He pulled back slightly from his parents' embrace. "That's her," he said, pointing. "That's the lady who helped me. She's in movies." Mrs. Reynolds looked up, her tear-streaked face registering recognition through her emotion. "Miss Streep," she managed, her voice breaking, "I don't even know how to begin to thank you." Meryl shook her head. "Your son is the brave one. He approached me. He took that risk. We've always told him that if he was ever in trouble, he should find a mother to help him," Mr. Reynolds said, his arm still firmly around Nathan's shoulders as if afraid to let go. "I guess he found the best mother he could." Nathan tugged at his mother's sleeve. "She believed me when I told her, and she has a special phone that called the police right away." Mrs. Reynolds finally rose from her crouched position, though she kept one hand on Nathan's shoulder. She approached Meryl with tears still flowing. "May I hug you? I know that sounds strange, but—" Meryl stepped forward and embraced her before she could finish the sentence. "There's nothing strange about it at all." As they separated, Detective Rodriguez cleared her throat gently. "I know this is an emotional moment, but I need to brief you all on what happens next." She gestured to the chairs around the table. "Please, let's sit." Once they were seated, Nathan nestled between his parents but still clutching Buddy to his chest, Rodriguez continued. "Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds, we'll need Nathan to work with a specialized child forensic interviewer tomorrow. What he remembers could be crucial to finding other children." Mrs. Reynolds tightened her arm around her son. "Haven't you already questioned him enough?" "Mom," Nathan said with surprising firmness, "I want to help the other kids. There was a little girl with red hair. She was crying for her mom too." The simple statement hung in the air, a stark reminder of the stakes. Mrs. Reynolds closed her eyes briefly, then nodded. "Of course, we'll do whatever is needed." "Tonight, though," Rodriguez continued, "I believe Nathan should go home with you. A patrol car will remain outside your house for security, and we'll arrange for the forensic interview tomorrow." Mr. Reynolds nodded. "What about these people who took him? What happens to them?" "They're in custody facing multiple felony charges," Rodriguez explained. "Based on evidence we've already gathered, they won't be getting bail. Your son is safe from them." "But there are others, aren't there?" Mrs. Reynolds asked perceptively. This wasn't just 2 people acting alone. Rodriguez exchanged glances with Meryl before answering carefully. "We believe they were part of a larger operation, yes. But with what we've discovered today, we have our first real chance at dismantling it completely." Elaine Chen, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "I'll be arranging for trauma counseling services. Children who experience abduction often need specialized support, even when they appear resilient." Mrs. Reynolds, herself a kindergarten teacher, as Meryl had learned, nodded in understanding. "We've already been researching therapists ever since he disappeared. We never gave up hope." Nathan had resumed coloring, seemingly absorbed in his artwork, but undoubtedly listening to every word. He looked up suddenly. "Is Miss Streep coming home with us too?" The innocent question brought a moment of gentle laughter to the room, breaking some of the tension. "I'm afraid Miss Streep has her own home to go to," his father explained. "She's already done so much for us." Nathan frowned slightly, then carefully tore off the page he'd been working on and handed it to Meryl. It was a drawing of a woman with curly hair standing beside a small boy, holding what appeared to be a teddy bear. Above them, written in uneven capital letters, were the words, "My hero." "So you don't forget me," he explained seriously. Meryl accepted the drawing with the reverence it deserved. "I could never forget you, Nathan, never." Rodriguez's phone buzzed, and she stepped aside to take the call. When she returned, her expression had shifted subtly, a new urgency in her eyes. "We've identified another location from the documents seized at the house," she said. "A property, upstate. We're organizing a raid for tonight." Mr. Reynolds stood up. "Then we should get Nathan home so you can focus on that." As they prepared to leave, Rodriguez pulled Meryl aside. "The media presence outside has grown. There's no way to avoid them completely, but we can take you and the Reynolds family out through the kitchen to minimize exposure." Through the narrow window, Meryl could see the flashing lights of news vans. Her quiet lunch had become breaking news, her private act of compassion now public property. "Whatever keeps Nathan most protected," she replied. As they made their way through the kitchen, Nathan reached for Meryl's hand one last time. "Will I see you again?" he asked. Before Meryl could answer, Rodriguez's phone rang again. Her expression as she answered told everyone that something significant had developed. "I need to get back to the precinct immediately," she said after hanging up. "We found something in Peter Whitman's communications that changes everything." She looked directly at Meryl. "And strangely enough, it involves you." The unexpected statement lingered in the air as they stepped out into the alley where police vehicles waited to transport them away from the cameras and into a night filled with more questions than answers. The precinct buzzed with activity as detectives and officers moved with purpose between desks and conference rooms. Meryl sat in a chair beside Detective Rodriguez's desk, a cup of untouched coffee cooling before her. After ensuring the Reynolds family made it safely home with police protection, she had agreed to come to the station to learn how she might be connected to this case. "Sorry to keep you waiting," Rodriguez said, returning with a manila folder and a tablet. "Things are moving quickly." "I understand," Meryl replied. "You mentioned something about me being connected to this?" Rodriguez nodded, her expression serious. "In Peter Whitman's phone, we found encrypted communications with someone higher up in their organization. Your name appears multiple times." She slid the tablet across the desk, displaying screenshots of text messages. Meryl scanned them, her blood running cold as she read, "Auction prep underway. Confirmed buyers include the software billionaire, the Saudi prince, and Streep's character from DC." Another message read, "Client wants package 7 prepped to match Streep's latest appearance. Platinum blonde, shoulder length." "I don't understand," Meryl said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What does this mean?" Rodriguez leaned forward. "We believe they're referring to your character from that political thriller you did last year, The Ambassador's Wife. You played a corrupt State Department official involved in human trafficking." "Eleanor Pierce," Meryl murmured, remembering the dark, complex villain she'd portrayed, a character who used diplomatic connections to shield a trafficking operation. "It appears someone is using your fictional character as their code name," Rodriguez explained. "Based on our intelligence, the organization assigns their high-level members identity codes based on film characters." Meryl set the tablet down, her hands trembling slightly. "So someone saw my performance and adopted it." "It's not uncommon for criminals to be influenced by media," Rodriguez said. "But in this case, we think it's more than that. The person using this code name operates primarily in diplomatic circles, just like your character. They're hiding in plain sight," Meryl realized, "using diplomatic immunity to avoid prosecution." "Exactly." Rodriguez opened the folder and spread several photographs across the desk. These were taken at various charity events over the past year. The photos showed elegant gatherings with politicians, diplomats, and celebrities, including Meryl herself. In several images, she stood smiling beside distinguished-looking men and women in formal attire. "We believe one of these people is using your character as their cover identity," Rodriguez said. "They attended the same events as you, possibly to study your mannerisms for their role." Meryl studied the photos, a sense of violation washing over her. The idea that someone had stood beside her, smiled for cameras with her, all while orchestrating. The kidnapping and trafficking of children like Nathan was nauseating. "Do you recognize anyone suspicious in these photos?" Rodriguez asked. "Anyone who seemed particularly interested in your portrayal of Eleanor Pierce?" Meryl shook her head, examining each face carefully. "So many people approach me at these events to discuss my roles, I couldn't possibly remember everyone." The door opened, and a young officer entered. "Detective, the forensic team found something else. They need you immediately." "I'll be right there," Rodriguez replied, before turning back to Meryl. "I need to step out, but please keep looking. The smallest detail could help us." After Rodriguez left, Meryl continued studying the photographs. In one image from a UNESCO benefit, she noticed a woman in the background watching her intently, while others in the frame were engaged in conversation. Something about her poised stillness amid the social chatter seemed oddly familiar. The precinct door opened, and Meryl looked up to see a man in a tailored suit walking purposefully toward Rodriguez's desk. He stopped short when he saw her. "Ms. Streep," he said, extending his hand. "Agent Thomas Keller, FBI. I'm the lead on our task force investigating this trafficking network. Thank you for what you did today." Meryl shook his hand. "I only did what anyone would do." "Not everyone would have noticed what you did, or acted so decisively," Keller countered, taking a seat. "May I?" He gestured toward the photographs. "Please," Meryl said. "Detective Rodriguez was just showing me these." Keller nodded. "We've been tracking this network for 18 months. They're sophisticated, careful, and extremely well connected. Until today, we've never been able to get close to their operations." "Because of Nathan," Meryl said softly. "Yes, his escape, thanks to your help, has given us our first real opening. We've identified 3 properties connected to the network, and there's an operation underway at one of them right now." Meryl pointed to the woman in the UNESCO photograph. "This person seemed interested in me. I remember thinking she was studying me rather than socializing." Keller took the photo, his expression sharpening. "Sophia Devereaux, attaché to the French consulate." He pulled out his phone and made a quick call. "I need everything we have on Devereaux. Priority 1. After hanging up, he explained, "She fits the profile perfectly. Diplomatic cover, moves between major cities, attends high-profile events, and she was at the premiere of The Ambassador's Wife," Rodriguez returned, her expression even more serious than before. "We found something at Whitman's apartment, a ledger with dates and locations." She looked directly at Meryl. "Including the charity gala you're scheduled to attend 3 days from now at the Metropolitan Museum." Meryl felt the blood drain from her face. "They're planning something at the gala?" "We believe so," Keller confirmed. "And given these communications, the person using your character's identity will likely be there." "What do you need from me?" Meryl asked without hesitation. Rodriguez and Keller exchanged glances. "Ordinarily, we'd cancel your appearance," Rodriguez began carefully. "But you need me to go," Meryl finished for her. "To draw them out." "We would never ask you to put yourself at risk," Keller said quickly. "But your presence at the gala, with our agents in place, could give us our best chance to identify and apprehend the leader of this network." Meryl thought of Nathan, of the drawing he had given her of the other children still missing. Her decision was immediate. "I'll do it, Ms. Streep," Rodriguez began. "Meryl, please," she interrupted. "And I'm not being heroic. I simply can't walk away knowing there are other children like Nathan still out there." Keller nodded solemnly. "We'll arrange comprehensive security. You'll have agents with you at all times. But we need to be careful," Rodriguez added. "If they suspect a trap, they'll disappear, along with any hope of finding the other children." "I've played many roles in my career," Meryl said with quiet determination, but none as important as this one. As they began discussing the details of the operation, Meryl's phone rang. It was Nathan's mother. "He can't sleep," Mrs. Reynolds said, her voice strained with concern. "He keeps asking for you. I know it's an enormous imposition, but is there any chance—" "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Meryl replied without hesitation. As she gathered her things, Rodriguez watched her with newfound respect. "Most people in your position would have handed this off to their security team hours ago." Meryl smiled. "Sadly, most people haven't looked into the eyes of a child like Nathan and promised to help." She paused at the door. "And I always keep my promises." The Reynolds home was a modest colonial in a quiet Connecticut suburb, now surrounded by unmarked police vehicles and officers in plain clothes. Meryl arrived just after 11, exhausted but determined to keep her promise to Nathan. Mrs. Reynolds answered the door, relief washing over her tired face. "Thank you for coming. I know it's late and you must be drained." "It's no trouble," Meryl assured her, following Mrs. Reynolds inside. The house bore subtle signs of Nathan's absence. A calendar frozen on the date he disappeared, a small collection of stuffed animals arranged on the couch as if waiting for his return. Mrs. Reynolds noticed Meryl's gaze and smiled sadly. "We kept everything exactly as it was. Some people thought we should put his things away, that it would be easier, but we couldn't. It would have felt like giving up." Mr. Reynolds appeared from upstairs. "He's still awake. He's been asking for you." "Since dinner." He extended his hand to Meryl. "We can never thank you enough." "No thanks needed," Meryl replied, following them upstairs. Nathan's room was painted a soft blue with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. He sat up as soon as she appeared in the doorway, Buddy clutched to his chest. "You came," he said, his voice small but relieved. "I promised, didn't I?" Meryl sat on the edge of his bed. "Your mom said you were having trouble sleeping." Nathan nodded. "I'm scared they'll come back." "Those people are in jail," Meryl reassured him. "And there are police officers outside your house." "But what about the others? The bad people who were at the other houses?" Meryl exchanged glances with the Reynolds, impressed by Nathan's perception. "The police are looking for them right now. In fact, they're raiding one of those houses tonight." "Because of what I told them?" "Yes," Meryl confirmed. "You've been very brave, Nathan. The things you remembered are helping other children." Nathan seemed to consider this, his small fingers absently stroking Buddy's worn fur. "At the house with the red barn there was a girl. She was little, like 4. She cried a lot." Meryl felt her heart constrict. "Did you talk to her?" "Only once. Her name was Lily. I told her my mum and dad were looking for me, and maybe hers were too." His lower lip trembled. "Do you think they found her tonight?" "I hope so," Meryl said, unable to promise something she couldn't know. "The police are doing everything they can." Mrs. Reynolds stepped forward. "Sweetheart, it's very late. You need to sleep." Nathan's eyes filled with sudden fear. "What if I have bad dreams? Then you'll wake up safe in your own room," Mr. Reynolds said gently. "With us right down the hall?" Nathan didn't seem convinced. Meryl had an inspiration. "Would it help if I read you a story? When I feel scared, that sometimes helps me fall asleep." Nathan nodded eagerly. Mr. Reynolds retrieved a worn copy of Where the Wild Things Are from the bookshelf. As Meryl began to read, Nathan gradually relaxed against his pillows. By the time Max sailed back over a year and into the night of his very own room, Nathan was asleep, his breathing deep and even. Meryl carefully stood, tucking Buddy more securely, under Nathan's arm. "Would you like some tea before you go?" Mrs. Reynolds asked as they headed downstairs. "I'd appreciate that," Meryl replied, realizing she hadn't eaten since lunch. In the kitchen, as Mrs. Reynolds prepared tea, Meryl's phone vibrated with a text from Rodriguez. "Property secured. 4 children recovered. Can you talk?" Excusing herself, Meryl stepped into the living room to call the detective. "We were successful," Rodriguez said without preamble. 4 children, ages 3 to 7, all reported missing within the last 2 months. They're being transported to medical facilities now. "Was one of them a little girl named Lily?" Meryl asked, remembering Nathan's words. A pause. Yes. How did you know? Nathan mentioned her. She's 4? 4.5, Rodriguez confirmed. She's physically unharmed, but deeply traumatized. All of them are. What about the people running? The operation? 2 arrests, but they're low level. The real targets weren't there. Rodriguez's voice tightened with frustration. But we did find more documentation, detailed records of children, their processing locations and their intended buyers. Meryl closed her eyes against the clinical horror of those terms. And the gala? It's definitely significant. Looks like they're planning to finalize several transactions there, taking advantage of the international crowd. Potential buyers will be present, along with key members of the network. Including Eleanor Pierce? Meryl asked, referring to her character's name being used as a code. We believe so. Agent Keller is coordinating with event security now. I need to meet tomorrow to go over the plan. After ending the call, Meryl returned to the kitchen where the Reynolds were waiting with tea and sandwiches. Good news, she told them. The police rescued 4 children tonight, including the little girl Nathan mentioned, Lily. Mrs. Reynolds pressed her hand to her mouth. Thank God. What happens now? Mr. Reynolds asked. Meryl hesitated, unsure how much to share. The investigation is ongoing. There's an operation planned for the charity gala I'm attending in a few days. You're still helping them, Mrs. Reynolds observed, going above and beyond. I can't step away now, Meryl admitted. Not when I might be able to help catch the people behind all this. Mr. Reynolds looked concerned. Isn't that dangerous? There will be security, Meryl assured them, though the same question had crossed her mind. And this might be their best chance to dismantle the entire network. Her phone buzzed again, a text from Keller. Confirmation on Devereaux. She's definitely involved. We'll brief you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Car will pick you up. As Meryl prepared to leave, Mrs. Reynolds embraced her. Nathan was right to seek you out, she said softly. Not just because you're famous, but because somehow he sensed your compassion. Driving back to her Manhattan apartment, Meryl thought about the rescued children, about Nathan sleeping safely in his own bed, and about those who were still missing. The knowledge that someone had perverted her artistic creation, her portrayal of Eleanor Pierce, to facilitate such evil filled her with a cold fury. Outside her building, the night doorman greeted her with concern. Rough day, Miss Streep? I saw the news. It's not over yet, Henry, she replied, stepping into the elevator. Not by a long shot. In her apartment, Meryl placed Nathan's drawing on her refrigerator before checking her messages. Dozens of calls from her agent, publicist, and director about the day's events and her missed obligations. All of that could wait. Tomorrow would bring the next phase of this unexpected mission, one that had begun with a whispered secret in a restaurant and would end, she hoped, with justice for children like Nathan and Lily. But first, she needed rest. In 3 days, she would walk into the Metropolitan Museum of Art, not as Meryl Streep the actress, but as bait in a trap designed to catch predators. The Children's Advocacy Center was a bright, welcoming space designed to put young victims at ease. Colorful artwork adorned the walls, and comfortable furniture filled the waiting area. Meryl sat beside Nathan and his parents as they waited for his forensic interview to begin. You don't have to be nervous, Meryl assured him, noticing his restless fidgeting. The lady you're going to talk to is very nice. She just wants to hear your story. Will you come with me? Nathan asked, clutching Buddy against his chest. I'll be right outside, Meryl promised. But this is something you need to do on your own, just like when you were brave enough to come to my table at the restaurant. Nathan seemed to consider this. I was really scared then. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared, Meryl told him. It means doing what's right even when you are scared. A door opened, and a woman with a kind smile and gentle eyes approached. Hello, Nathan. I'm Dr. Collins. Would you like to come see our special room where we can talk? Nathan looked at his parents, then at Meryl, gathering courage from their reassuring nods. With Buddy firmly in hand, he stood and followed Dr. Collins down the hallway. He trusts you, Mrs. Reynolds observed once Nathan was out of earshot. More than the counselors, more than the police. Children have good instincts, Meryl replied, and soon he'll be able to put all this behind him. Mr. Reynolds shook his head. Will he, though? The psychologist we spoke with yesterday said, trauma like this doesn't just disappear. No, Meryl acknowledged, but with time and support it becomes manageable. I've researched childhood trauma extensively for roles. The resilience of children is remarkable. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Detective Rodriguez and Agent Keller. Both looked tired but determined. How is he today? Rodriguez asked. Nervous, Mrs. Reynolds replied, but he understands the importance of what he's doing. Keller nodded approvingly. He's a remarkable child. The information he provided already has been invaluable. He turned to Meryl. We've made progress overnight. Surveillance has been established at the museum. We've also confirmed that Sophia Devereaux will be attending the gala. Along with 3 other diplomatic figures we suspect are involved, Rodriguez added, This is shaping up to be the largest trafficking bust in a decade. Mrs. Reynolds listened with wide eyes. I had no idea the scope of what Nathan stumbled into. These networks operate in shadows, Keller explained. They carefully cultivate legitimate facades while targeting vulnerable children. And the children you rescued last night? Meryl asked. How are they? Rodriguez's expression softened. They're receiving care, physical examinations, psychological assessments. Their families have been notified. She paused. Some of them had been missing for months. The reunions have been emotional. The thought of those reunions warmed Meryl's heart, even as she thought of the children still missing. And the little girl, Lily? Her parents are flying in from Seattle today. Keller said, She's been asking for Nathan. Mr. Reynolds leaned forward. Nathan mentioned her several times. Should we arrange for them to meet? Rodriguez and Keller exchanged glances. The child psychologists think it might actually be helpful for both of them, Rodriguez said. Shared. Trauma creates powerful bonds even among children. We could bring her here this afternoon, Keller suggested, after Nathan's interview is complete. The door opened again and Dr. Collins emerged without Nathan. He's doing wonderfully, she assured the anxious parents. One of our specialists is with him now, but I wanted to update you on our progress. He's providing details. Rodriguez? Asked Dr. Collins, nodded. Remarkably specific ones. Locations, names he overheard, routines. Children often absorb more information than adults realize, especially in threatening situations when their awareness is heightened. When can we see him? Mrs. Reynolds asked. We're almost finished, another 20 minutes or so. Dr. Collins looked at Meryl. He mentioned you several times, Ms. Streep. Your intervention clearly made a profound impression on him. After Dr. Collins returned to Nathan, Keller pulled Meryl aside. We need to brief you on the gala operation. Can you come to the field? Office after this? Of course, Meryl agreed, but I'd like to be here when Lily arrives. Rodriguez checked her watch. That should work. Her escort won't arrive for a few hours. When Nathan finally emerged, he looked tired but somehow lighter, as if unburdening himself of his experiences had lifted a weight from his small shoulders. He immediately sought out Meryl, showing her a drawing he had made during his interview, a detailed map of the house with the red barn. Dr. Collins said this will help the police find more kids, he explained proudly. It absolutely will, Rodriguez confirmed, examining the drawing with genuine appreciation. You have an excellent memory, Nathan. After lunch in the center's family room, Rodriguez received a call. They're here, she announced after hanging up. Minutes later, a small girl with auburn hair entered, accompanied by a female officer. When she spotted Nathan, her solemn expression transformed. Nathan, she cried, rushing forward. Nathan's face lit up with recognition. Lily! The adults watched in amazement as the two children embraced like old friends, immediately beginning to chatter about Buddy and how Nathan had promised they would both go home. For you were right, Lily said, her voice tiny but clear. The police did come. Nathan nodded seriously. I told you they would, and Ms. Streep helped me. He pointed to Meryl. She's in movies, but she's nice. Lily looked at Meryl with wide, curious eyes. Did you help find me too? Meryl crouched to the child's level. Nathan helped find you. He remembered where you were. This seemed to satisfy Lily, who turned back to Nathan with renewed interest in Buddy. As the children played, Rodriguez approached Meryl. "We should head to the field office now. The security briefing for the gala operation is scheduled for 2 o'clock. Meryl nodded, but found herself reluctant to leave. The sight of Nathan and Lily playing together, two children reclaiming bits of their stolen childhood, was profoundly moving. "Ms. Streep," Nathan called, noticing her preparing to leave. "Are you coming back?" "As soon as I can," she promised. "I have to help the police with something important first." Nathan considered this, then nodded solemnly. "To catch the other." "Bad people?" "Yes," Meryl admitted, seeing no point in shielding him from what he already understood. Nathan surprised her by approaching and wrapping his arms around her waist. "Be careful," he whispered. "They're really mean." Meryl hugged him back, a lump forming in her throat. "I will be, and there will be lots of police to protect me." As she left with Rodriguez and Keller, Meryl cast one last glance at Nathan and Lily. Their resilience in the face of trauma strengthened her resolve for what lay ahead, a dangerous operation that would require all her skills, not as an actress, but as someone determined to protect children from predators who saw them as commodities. In 3 days, she would walk into the Metropolitan Museum of Art, not as a guest, but as the central figure in an elaborate trap. And somewhere in that glittering crowd would be the person who had stolen her character's identity to commit unspeakable crimes. The Metropolitan Museum of Art glowed against the night sky, its grand entrance illuminated by spotlights as limousines, and luxury cars lined Fifth Avenue. Celebrities, diplomats, and the elite of New York society ascended the iconic steps in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos, pausing for photographs before disappearing inside. In a secured room several blocks away, Meryl sat patiently as technicians fitted her with a discreet earpiece and microphone. The device was masterfully concealed within her elegant diamond earrings, designed to be indistinguishable from the real jewelry that adorned her neck and wrists. "The range is excellent," the technician assured her. "The team will hear everything within a 6-foot radius of you." Agent Keller stood nearby, reviewing the operation details with his team. "We have 26 agents in position, including staff security and guests. The museum has been mapped into quadrants, each monitored by separate teams." He turned to Meryl. "Remember, your only job is to circulate naturally and engage with Devereaux if the opportunity arises. Do not attempt to confront or question her. We need her to believe this is a normal gala." Meryl nodded, mentally rehearsing the evening's scenario, as she would any challenging role. "And the other suspects?" "All confirmed attending," Rodriguez said, studying a tablet displaying security feeds from the museum. "Devereaux, Harrington from the British Consulate, and Ambassador Diaz. Our analysts are confident at least one of them is using the Eleanor Pierce code name." The last 3 days had been a whirlwind of preparation, briefings, and careful planning. The operation had expanded to include multiple law enforcement agencies, with simultaneous raids planned for locations across 3 states once the key members of the network were identified and apprehended at the gala. "Here it's time," Keller announced, checking his watch. "Ms. Streep's car will arrive fashionably late, as planned." Meryl stood, smoothing the elegant blue gown she had chosen for the evening. "How is Nathan today?" she asked Rodriguez, who had been coordinating with the protection detail at the Reynolds home. "He's good. Made you another drawing." Rodriguez smiled. "Said it was for good luck tonight." This small connection to Nathan steadied Meryl as she prepared to face the evening ahead. She had visited him twice more since the day he met Lily, watching with quiet joy as he gradually reclaimed his childhood, one small step at a time. "Our car is ready," Keller said. "Let's move." The journey to the museum took less than 15 minutes, but to Meryl, it felt much longer. She focused on her breathing, centering herself as she had before countless performances. "Comms check," came a voice in her ear as the car approached the museum. "Not if you can hear us clearly." Meryl nodded, her expression betraying nothing as the car pulled up to the entrance. Camera flashes erupted as she emerged, smiling and waving as she had at countless premieres and award ceremonies. Tonight, however, the familiar ritual served a far more crucial purpose. Inside, the gala was in full swing. The museum's grand hall had been transformed into an elegant reception space, with champagne flowing and an orchestra playing softly in the background. Meryl moved through the crowd with practiced ease, accepting compliments on her recent film, while scanning faces for those she had memorized from the briefing files. "Devereaux at your 2 o'clock, came the voice in her ear. "By the Egyptian exhibit entrance." Meryl turned casually, spotting Sophia Devereaux in a striking red gown, deep in conversation with a Middle Eastern man she recognized as a Saudi diplomat. "Ambassador Diaz just entered the East Wing," another voice reported. Moving toward the bar, Meryl accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, actually an FBI agent, and continued her circuit of the room. She engaged in brief conversations, always moving, creating natural opportunities to observe the suspects. An hour into the event, she found herself face to face with Sophia Devereaux. "Ms. Streep," Devereaux said, her French accent subtle but distinctive. "What an honor. I so admired your performance in The Ambassador's Wife. Such a complex character." Meryl smiled, suppressing a chill at the calculated reference. "Thank you. I found Eleanor Pierce fascinating to portray, the duality of her public and private selves." "Indeed," Devereaux agreed, something flickering behind her eyes. "The masks we wear in society can be quite liberating." "I've always believed that understanding darkness helps us appreciate light," Meryl replied, maintaining eye contact. Devereaux smiled. "A philosophical approach. Speaking of which, I understand you recently had an interesting encounter with a young admirer." The deliberate reference to Nathan confirmed what the investigators had suspected. Devereaux was fishing for information about how much Meryl knew. "Children can be wonderfully unpredictable," Meryl answered carefully. "It's what makes them special." "Special indeed," Devereaux agreed, her smile never reaching her eyes. "Some are quite valuable." The loaded word hung between them, and through her earpiece Meryl heard Keller, "Perfect, keep her talking. We're tracking her phone communications in real time." Before Meryl could respond, they were interrupted by Ambassador Diaz, a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and an immaculate tuxedo. "Miss Streep, Miss Devereaux," he greeted them warmly. What a pleasure to find the two most intriguing women at the gala deep in conversation. "Ambassador," Meryl acknowledged with a gracious nod. "We were just discussing the value of authenticity." "A rare commodity these days," Diaz commented, his gaze lingering on Devereaux, "particularly in our circles." The subtle exchange between Diaz and Devereaux did not go unnoticed by Meryl or the listening agents. Something was being communicated beneath the pleasantries. "We have confirmation," came Keller's voice in Meryl's ear. "Electronic communications intercepted between Diaz and an unknown contact. Code phrases matching our intelligence. He's our primary target." Devereaux excused herself, moving toward the terrace doors. A moment later, Meryl observed Richard Harrington from the British consulate following the same path. "They're moving," Keller said urgently. "Something's happening. Ms. Streep, find a reason to move toward the Egyptian wing. We need to keep eyes on all three." Meryl gracefully extracted herself from a conversation and headed in the directed path, passing Devereaux and Harrington engaged in intense, whispered conversation near a display of ancient artifacts. "Package transfer confirmed for midnight," she heard Harrington say. "The buyers are getting anxious after the recent complications." Devereaux noticed Meryl approaching and smoothly shifted to casual conversation about the exhibit. But it was too late. The exchange had been captured by Meryl's microphone. "That's it," Keller confirmed in her ear. "We have enough. Operation is a go in 3 minutes. Find a reason to move toward the main exit." Meryl made her way through, the crowd stopping to chat briefly with familiar faces, maintaining the perfect image of a celebrity enjoying a charity event. As she reached the grand staircase, the lights flickered once, the signal that agents were moving into position. "All teams ready," came the command over her earpiece. "Execute now." With practiced precision, FBI agents throughout the venue moved toward Devereaux, Harrington, and Diaz. Other agents secured the exits, while museum security, briefed only moments before, began quietly escorting regular guests away from the operation zones. Meryl stood at the edge of the grand hall, watching as Diaz was approached by 2 agents posing as waiters. His face registered shock, then anger, followed by resignation as he realized escape was impossible. Across the room, Devereaux attempted to flee toward a service exit, only to find her path blocked by Rodriguez and 2 other agents. Harrington, seeing what was happening, tried to dispose of his phone in a champagne fountain but was quickly apprehended. Within minutes, the 3 primary suspects were being discreetly removed from the venue through separate exits, away from the cameras, and remaining guests who remained largely unaware of the operation that had just unfolded. Keller approached Meryl. "It's done. You were perfect. We're also executing warrants at 6 locations simultaneously. This network is finished." Meryl felt a wave of relief wash over her. "And the children?" "We believe we'll recover at least 11 more tonight," Keller confirmed, his professional demeanor softening slightly. "Thanks to you." As she was escorted from the museum to a waiting car, Meryl thought of Nathan, safely asleep in his own bed, and the other children who would soon experience the same reunion with their families that he had. "Can you take me to Connecticut?" she asked the driver. "There's a little boy who needs to hear this news first thing tomorrow." 3 months later, Meryl stood in the sunshine-filled garden of the Reynolds family home, watching as Nathan chased a puppy across the lawn. The golden retriever, aptly named Buddy, had been Meryl's gift to the family once Nathan had made sufficient progress in his therapy to handle the responsibility. "He's like a different child," Mrs. Reynolds said, joining Meryl on the patio. "Dr. Winters says his recovery has been remarkable." Meryl smiled as Nathan collapsed in a fit of giggles, the puppy enthusiastically licking his face. "Children are resilient. They can heal from almost anything with the right support." The aftermath of the gala operation had dominated headlines for weeks. 17 children in total had been rescued during the coordinated raids that night. Ambassador Diaz, Sophia Devereaux, and Richard Harrington were among 12 high-profile arrests, with dozens more lower-level operatives taken into custody across 3 countries. The story had shocked the nation. Respected diplomats and business leaders involved in child trafficking, using diplomatic pouches and immunity to transport children across borders. Meryl had given just one brief statement to the press before stepping back to let law enforcement handle the public narrative. Her focus had remained where it mattered most, on Nathan and the other children whose lives had been irrevocably changed by their experiences. "The Foundation office called this morning," Mrs. Reynolds said, pouring iced tea for Meryl. "The first round of therapy grants has been approved." The Sanctuary Foundation, established by Meryl in the weeks following the arrests, provided resources for trauma therapy, educational support and family counseling for all the recovered children. What had begun as a personal response to Nathan's situation had quickly grown into a nationwide initiative. "That's wonderful news," Meryl replied. "How are the support groups going?" "Better than we expected. Having other parents who understand what we're going through, it makes all the difference." Mrs. Reynolds watched her son play for a moment before continuing. "And Lily's family is moving to Connecticut next month. The children will be able to see each other regularly." Nathan had spotted them talking and was now racing toward the patio, Buddy bounding alongside him. His cheeks were flushed with healthy exertion, his eyes bright with childish excitement. A far cry from the solemn, frightened boy who had approached Meryl's table 3 months ago. "Mrs. Streep, Buddy can fetch now. Want to see?" Without waiting for an answer, he threw a tennis ball across the lawn and the puppy enthusiastically gave chase. "Impressive," Meryl praised, clapping as Buddy returned the ball to Nathan's feet. "Dad says I'm the best trainer ever," Nathan announced proudly. "I believe it," Meryl agreed, noting how the boy's stutter, a temporary symptom of his trauma, had completely disappeared. Mr. Reynolds emerged from the house carrying a small package. "Special delivery for you, Nathan. From your friend, Agent Rodriguez." Nathan carefully opened the package to reveal a junior FBI badge mounted in a frame with a handwritten note. His face lit up as he showed it to Meryl. "She says I'm the bravest junior agent she's ever met." "She's absolutely right," Meryl agreed, remembering how Rodriguez had kept her promise to stay connected with Nathan throughout the investigation and trials. After Nathan returned to playing with Buddy, Mr. Reynolds turned to Meryl. "We watched your interview about the new film yesterday. It sounds powerful. Meryl nodded thoughtfully. The experience with Nathan had profoundly influenced her approach to her latest project, a drama about child advocacy that had been in development. When this all began, what had started as research had become lived experience, transforming her portrayal in ways that early critics were already calling career-defining. "I wanted to tell a story that honors what these children go through, while still offering hope," she explained. "The producers agreed to donate a percentage of proceeds to the foundation. Will you tell the world what really happened?" Mrs. Reynolds asked. "About your role in the rescue operation?" Meryl shook her head. "That's not my story to tell. The focus should remain on the work that still needs to be done, not on my involvement." The sigh. Producers had wanted to incorporate elements of the real events into the film's promotion, but Meryl had firmly declined. Her connection to Nathan remained private, protected from the inevitable sensationalism of Hollywood marketing. Nathan ran back to them, slightly out of breath. "Mom, can Ms. Streep stay for dinner? I want to show her my new telescope." "Only if she's not too busy," Mrs. Reynolds replied, looking questioningly at Meryl. "I'd love to," Meryl answered without hesitation, despite the early morning flight. To Los Angeles, scheduled for her film premiere the next day, some things took priority over professional obligations. As the afternoon progressed into evening, they ate dinner on the patio, Nathan chattering excitedly about his return to school, his new friends, and his science project. Normalcy had been reclaimed piece by piece, day by day. After dinner, as promised, Nathan proudly demonstrated his telescope, pointing out constellations in the early evening sky with the confidence of a budding astronomer. "That's Orion," he explained seriously. He was a hunter with a special belt. "Very impressive," Meryl replied, genuinely moved by his enthusiasm for the future rather than fear of the past. When it was time to leave, Nathan presented Meryl with a carefully wrapped package. Inside was a framed drawing, Nathan, his parents, Buddy and Meryl standing together under a bright sun. "It's our family," he explained, "and you're in it too." Meryl blinked back unexpected tears as she hugged him goodbye. "This is the greatest award I've ever received," she told him truthfully. Driving away from the Reynolds home, Meryl reflected on how a chance encounter in a restaurant had changed so many lives, including her own. Her career had always been defined by her ability to step into others' experiences, to portray lives different from her own. But no role, no performance, no accolade had ever meant as much as the simple act of listening to a frightened child and believing him when he whispered his truth. As the foundation grew and more children received the help they needed, Meryl knew that Nathan's courage had created ripples that would continue long after the headlines faded and the public moved on to the next sensation. Some stories weren't meant for the screen. Some heroes never received public acclaim, but in the quiet transformation of one child's life, and then another and another, Meryl had discovered the most meaningful role of her celebrated career. If you enjoyed this story, we have many, more that will warm your heart. Click the screen to explore more stories of hope, compassion, and resilience.